really been a huge advocate for corporate tax reform. As a matter of fact, he's helped host 12 different sessions trying to get the U.S. much more competitive. And why is that important for everyone in this room? Well, if you don't know, about 70% of HP's R&D actually is here in the U.S. About 70%. And about 70% of our sales are overseas. So for us, it's critically important that we stay very connected to our folks that are representing us in Congress and in the Senate, and advocate for policies that make the United States competitive, make all of us have the ability to do our jobs a little easier and compete in an economy that is global, where we're dealing with competitors, regardless if you're here from the personal printing and systems group or from the enterprise server storage and networking or wherever. It's important for us to be competitive on the global stage. So anyway, I just would like to thank the Congressman for being here with us today. He's going to give a short presentation of just kind of state of affairs to get us kicked off. Then I'm going to come back up and we're going to do Q&A. And with that, I would like to introduce to you Congressman Kevin Brady.
Thank you. This working great? Mark, thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me here today. HP is very important to me. As you would imagine, I have neighbors in this room. We have a lot of constituents. You're a big part of our economic driver in the Houston region. But you ought to know, too, HP is very helpful to me. Our job in Congress, at least one of my key jobs, is to tear down those trade barriers around the world, give us a chance to sell our products on a level playing field, with the rest of the world, which matters China and Asia, Latin America, and others, very aggressive about moving into these new markets. Our job is to make sure you're on that level playing field. We sort of tear down that America need not apply sign and allow us to compete. HP has been a great leader on trade. They've also been a huge leader on issues protecting intellectual property rights, making sure that the standards that we're competing against in these countries are fair for American companies. What we sometimes find is around the world, it's sort of like plugging an American plug into a European socket. Those standards don't always work, and they do that to keep our products out of the market. And HP's been a great leader with us in fighting to bring down, match those standards, bring down those barriers. And in the Asia-Pacific region, which is, by some estimates, 80% of the world's growth will occur in that Asia-Pacific region. HP's also been very important in working with us to try to tear those barriers down. So Sean, thank you for your leadership on those issues. With your permission, I want to just sort of run through 3 or 4 key issues going on in Washington right now, one of which comes about the end of the year, this massive tax cliff. First time we've had anything of this size occurring at the end of the year that's going to affect every one of you, your pocketbooks, your family pocketbooks, this business's pocketbooks. And then, like as Mark said, to open it up for question and answer on any these issues or anything else. So let me do that. And by the way, one of the advantages, we do a lot of town hall meetings. The reason we do this, I didn't move to Washington. I live in the Woodlands. My wife and I have 2 little boys, a 3rd grader and a 13-year-old. Turned 13 and immediately became a teenager. Overnight, became a teenager. So I commute back and forth to work each week, and we just figured it out for a Boy Scout troop the other day. I'm now finishing in miles my 4th round trip to the moon, commuting back and forth. I did that for that Boy Scout troop, but I was so impressed by it, I had to tell you all that. So let's talk about some of these issues. We have a big challenge right now. The President's offered a budget, sort of his blueprint for how the country ought to go in the next 10 years. We've offered one and passed one through the House as well. 2 different visions of the direction we want the country to go as far as getting our financial house in order. We've introduced, we're trying to fight through a highway bill, which for a region like ours, I don't need to tell you how critical it is. We get these roads built, these expanded, these bridges modernized. Energy bill, we've approved an energy bill in the House that has a big impact. And then looking ahead, this tax cliff I mentioned, I will run through all that in real quick 15 minutes so we get see sort of what our debt has been as a nation. But look at where it's taking off to. The red is the red debt. This is our current path of debt. If we don't change our ways as a country, as you can tell, it becomes unsustainable awfully quickly. The House, we have a different view of what direction we ought to go. We passed a budget bill for the second year in a row. We call it the path of prosperity, but the point is we're trying to change the path. We're trying to change the curve and not just get back to a balanced budget because our debt's so high. Like a company, like a family that's deep in debt, you can't just break even again. You've got to start paying off that debt. So our goal is not just a balanced budget, it's actually to pay off the federal debt over time. You look at Europe, you read every day about the problems over there, that their sovereign debt crisis, they're not out of the woods by any means. You look at them and you think, well, how could they have gotten into that shape? Was not anyone paying attention as that debt loaded on. But look where we stand in comparison. If you look at the 5 key countries in Europe and where their government debt is a share of the economy, that's how they measure your financial stability. You can tell America's right in the middle of it. We owe as much in debt as our entire economy. And anytime you get to that 90 to 100% range, the yellow lights flash in a major way because your economy starts to slow. Just like in your company, the more money that goes to debt service, the less goes to R&D, new products, sales and marketing. Same thing with the country, you slow down. President Obama, not going to criticize his budget. He really does feel that we need to be spending more as a nation to support the economy. Feels like we ought to have more taxes. His budget just reflects his philosophies and views. My concern is that spending, it would be, if we adopted the budget, the $4 trillion deficit in a row. We would add $11 trillion in new debt as a nation. More importantly, we would become the largest federal government in America's history. Larger even than World War II, where we dropped everything as a nation. Just became a war economy in government in order to win that war. That's always been the high water mark in America. With this budget, we would actually surpass, and we'll come to a chart in a minute where it shows what your share of that will be and what that means to you. The President has proposed about $2 trillion of tax increases in income in the 2 what I call pro-growth tax brackets. Probably a number of you in this room. Limitations on share deductions, the mortgage deductions, capital gains and dividends. He's proposing tax increases. Capital gains are what drives a lot of our business investment in America. And the dividends is for our senior citizens. Besides Social Security, dividend income is the thing that most seniors rely on to live on. But every time the government raises taxes on dividends, 1, you get fewer dividends, 2, people get less in their pocketbook. So I don't think that's a good move. He proposed an increase in death tax and double tax in U.S. companies like HP, and Mark mentioned this, but we have one of the worst business tax codes in the world. Here's the energy choice with the President's budget. If we increase oil and gas development, we create 1 million jobs. We send a lot of money to Washington and to the state and local governments revenue. We produce a lot more oil and gas. If we raise those taxes by our best estimates, we take the President's budget, $85 billion taxes, we lose about 50,000 jobs, we lose a bunch of revenue, we produce them. So it seems like a pretty easy choice, I would think. And of all 50 states, since the recession began, only 3 states have made back all their job losses and then some. Those 3 are Alaska, North Dakota, and Texas. What do they all have in common? Energy development. They're all exploring, they're all creating those jobs, all creating that revenue. That ought to be the model, I would think, for the rest of them. Let's move through this stuff. We're going to finish here, last 2 slides. In a year, we've got a major tax cliff coming our way. Some of the tax relief has already expired. The R&D tax credit that Mark talked about, critical to companies like HP to offset the costs. You got to do R&D to compete or you lose. You got to do it awfully well to compete and win. We need to give you the incentives to be able to write off those costs so you can do more of it. That's already expired as of January 1st. State and local sales tax deduction, that's what I'm in charge of in Congress. We restored in 2004 the the ability for you and I. We're in a state that doesn't have income taxes, thank goodness. But we weren't, because we didn't have those, we weren't allowed to write off anything from what we owe Uncle Sam. We put together a coalition of 7 cities. 2004, pushed hard for years. Got it restored so you and I can deduct those state and local sales taxes when you file Monday. We're scrambling in our house over receipts. Our kitchen table is a mess. It saves us in taxes about $1 billion a year. Some of the business tax things have already gone away. But on December 31st, this cliff hits in a major way. All the Republican tax relief, all the brackets, all the rates expire. It affects literally everyone in this room. The alternative minimum tax expands in a major way. And how many of you are familiar with AMT? Yeah, more and more Americans are. That's the original buffer rule. That was created in 1969 because 55 wealthy families in America were discovered would not pay taxes. The tax code didn't capture them. So instead of fixing the tax code, they said, we want the wealthy to pay their fair share. They created sort of a second code that catches them. Only for the wealthy. Only for 55 families in America. Today, if that isn't fixed at the end of the year, it will capture 24 million. So we've run this buffer rule play once before. We've seen how it grows over time to capture not just the wealthy, but a lot of middle-class Americans. That expires at the end of this year, the expansion for the death tax, the payroll tax, holiday, all ends. And then as well, capital gain, child tax credit. If you've got children, $1,000 deduction for every child. The marriage penalty comes back to life. You're sending your kids to college, you get tax credits to do that. Small business fencing all goes away. It's a huge cliff we're facing, and everyone knows it's coming in the business world, but every family needs to know it's coming as well. You mentioned it, Mark, just some of the, on Ways and Means, some of the tax issues that I lead on, extending that sales tax deduction, repealing the death tax. We lead a 42 organization, national group to end the death tax once and for all. Business tax reform, we've already laid out as a committee a draft to make you more competitive worldwide. And I also led an effort, not successfully, to repatriate our U.S. companies. HP competes around the world like other companies. You have sales around the world, and when you make those profits, they're one of the few major economies that actually taxes you, punishes you for bringing that money home and reinvesting into your parents. We actually tax you to bring it back to do more R&D, do more capital equipment, do any of that. It makes no sense. We have over $1.5 trillion of stranded profits around the world that we aren't bringing back to the United States because of our tax code. That needs to be fixed, not just short-term, but permanently as well. Then we have some other issues, including lead the effort to create a permanent R&D tax credit, modernize it so it fits companies like yours and expands it. Because what's happening is other countries are aggressively courting your R&D. They want those jobs overseas. They want that technology and those patents overseas. It grows their economies in a big way. America is very casual about it, sort of a attitude, oh, we know you'll put your R&D here. That's no longer the case. The competition